Jasmine Taylor's fingers tapped nervously against the steering wheel as red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror. She checked her speed. She hadn't been speeding. With a deep breath, she pulled her mother's black sedan to the side of Oakwood Drive, the tree-lined street just 3 blocks from their home. "License and registration," the officer said, his flashlight beam sweeping across the car interior before settling uncomfortably on her face. Jasmine reached for her wallet in the glove compartment. "Of course, officer." The policeman, Officer Brentwood according to his nameplate, looked to be in his mid-30s with a clean-shaven face and eyes that seemed to have already made up their mind about her. "This vehicle is registered to Maya Taylor," he said, studying the documents. "That's not you." "It's my mom's car," Jasmine explained, sitting up straighter. "At 17, she was used to people underestimating her. I have permission to drive it. I'm just picking up groceries for dinner." Officer Brentwood's eyebrow raised slightly. "And does your mom know you're out driving her car right now?" "Yes, sir, she does." Jasmine kept her voice steady despite feeling a flutter of annoyance. "I have my license. I've had it for over a year." The officer circled his flashlight beam around the car again, lingering on the back seat where 2 grocery bags sat. "Where'd you get the money for those groceries?" Jasmine blinked, caught off guard by the question. "My mom gave me her credit card. We're having my grandparents over tonight." Officer Brentwood let out a short laugh. "So you're driving Mommy's car using Mommy's credit card." Convenient story. The way he said it made Jasmine's stomach tighten. She'd been raised to respect authority, but also to stand up for herself. "It's not a story, sir. It's the truth. You can call her if you want." "Oh, I think we will," he said, the corner of his mouth turning up. "Step out of the vehicle, please." "Am I under arrest?" Jasmine asked, her heart beginning to race. "Just step out of the vehicle while we sort this out." Jasmine carefully opened the door and stepped onto the pavement, very aware of how this might look to anyone driving by. A black teenage girl being ordered out of a nice car in this predominantly white neighborhood. "Stand over here by the curb," Officer Brentwood directed, then spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, I've got a possible unauthorized use situation on Oakwood. Teenage female driving a 2023 black Audi registered to Maya Taylor." 2 more patrol cars pulled up within minutes, their lights adding to the spectacle. Jasmine felt her face growing hot with embarrassment as neighbors began peering out windows. "I can call my mom right now," Jasmine offered again. "She'll clear this up." Officer Brentwood was joined by 2 more officers, one tall with a buzz cut and another shorter with a thick mustache. "She says her mom knows she has the car," he told them with a smirk. "Probably joyriding." "I'm not joyriding," Jasmine protested. "I literally have grocery bags in the back seat. I'm making dinner tonight." "Sure, kid," said the officer with the mustache, chuckling. "And what does your mom do that she can afford an Audi like this?" "She's in the military," Jasmine answered simply. This earned louder laughs from all 3 officers. "What, like the Army?" Officer Brentwood asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. "Yes," Jasmine replied, pulling out her phone. "Can I please call her now?" "Your mom?" "Military," Officer Brentwood repeated, turning to his colleagues. "Let me guess, she's Special Forces too, right?" The other officer snickered. "Actually, she is," Jasmine said quietly. Their laughter grew louder. "Oh, this is good," said the tall officer. "Special Forces mom coming to the rescue." Jasmine felt a mix of anger and hurt wash over her, but she remembered her mother's words. "Never let them see they've gotten to you. Your dignity isn't something anyone else can take." She dialed her mother's number as the officers continued their comments, speaking about her as if she wasn't standing right there. "Mom," Jasmine said when the call connected, "I've been pulled over 3 blocks from home. The officers don't believe I have permission to drive your car." She could hear her mother's calm, measured voice on the other end. "Put me on speaker." Jasmine held out the phone. "My mom wants to speak to you." Officer Brentwood rolled his eyes but took the phone. "Ma'am, this is Officer Brentwood with the Oakdale Police. We've found your daughter driving your vehicle." "I'm aware," came the crisp reply. "I gave her permission. I'll be there in 10 minutes to clear this up." "Ma'am, if you could just confirm—" "Officer, I said I'll be there in 10 minutes. My daughter has done nothing wrong. Until I arrive, I expect her to be treated with respect and dignity. Is that clear?" Something in her tone made Officer Brentwood stand straighter. "Yes, ma'am." After hanging up, he handed the phone back to Jasmine with less swagger than before. "We'll wait for your mother to arrive." Jasmine nodded, still standing by the curb. The evening air had grown cooler, and she wished she'd worn something warmer than her light sweater. 20 minutes passed like this, the officers occasionally glancing at their watches or making small talk amongst themselves. "Your mom must be running late," Officer Brentwood finally said with a hint of triumph in his voice. "She's coming from the base," Jasmine explained. "Sometimes security takes longer." "The base?" the tall officer repeated with another laugh. Right just then, headlights appeared around the corner. A sleek black SUV with government plates pulled up behind the patrol cars. The officers turned, curiosity replacing amusement on their faces. The driver's door opened and Colonel Maya Taylor stepped out. Even at a distance, there was no mistaking her authority. Her uniform was impeccable, dress blues with the oak leaf insignia of a full colonel clearly visible. Multiple ribbons and medals lined her chest, and the Special Forces tab on her shoulder stood out prominently. Colonel Taylor closed her car door with deliberate calm and walked toward the group. Her boots hit the pavement with measured steps. She was not a tall woman, but something in how she carried herself made it impossible to look away. The officers' faces changed in an instant. Where there had been mocking disbelief, there was now uncertainty. Where there had been casual dismissal, there was now alert attention. "Good evening," Colonel Taylor said as she approached, her voice level and controlled. "I'm Colonel Maya Taylor, United States Army Special Forces. I understand there's been some confusion about my daughter using my vehicle." Officer Brentwood's face had drained of color. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally managed to speak. "Ma'am, Colonel, we were just what, officer?" Colonel Taylor asked, her gaze unwavering. "Just questioning my daughter's honesty? Just assuming she was lying about having permission to drive a car registered in my name? We have procedures we need to follow," the mustached officer interjected, trying to regain professional footing. "I understand procedures," Colonel Taylor replied. "I've built my career on following them. But I also understand respect and giving people the benefit of the doubt before jumping to conclusions." She turned to Jasmine, her expression softening slightly. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Jasmine nodded, relief flooding through her. "I'm fine, Mom." Colonel Taylor turned back to the officers. "Now what exactly is the issue here? Because from what I can see, you've detained my daughter for driving a car she had permission to drive with a valid license, while running an errand I asked her to do." The evening air grew colder as Jasmine stood beside the police cruiser, arms wrapped around herself. The flashing lights continued to paint the neighborhood in alternating red and blue, drawing more curious eyes from nearby houses. A couple walking their dog slowed down to stare at the scene. 3 police cars surrounding one teenage girl and her mother's sedan. "Can I at least sit down somewhere?" Jasmine asked, her legs tired from standing on the curb for so long. Officer Brentwood hesitated before nodding toward the back of his patrol car. "You can sit there, but keep the door open." Jasmine perched on the edge of the seat, phone clutched tightly in her hands. She sent a quick text update to her mother. "Still here. 3 officers now. They don't believe me about you." The reply came almost instantly. "On my way. Stay calm. Remember what we've talked about." What they'd talked about was how to handle situations exactly like this one. Her mother had sat her down the day she got her license and had a long conversation about what to do if she was ever pulled over. "Keep your hands visible. Be respectful but know your rights. Call me immediately. Don't let them intimidate you." The tall officer with the buzz cut leaned against his cruiser, drinking coffee from a travel mug. "So your mom's in Special Forces, huh?" He called over, his tone making it clear he still didn't believe her. "Yes," Jasmine answered simply, not taking the bait. "What unit?" he pressed. "5th Special Forces Group," Jasmine replied. The information as familiar to her as her own birthday. The officer nearly choked on his coffee. "5th Group? Out of Fort Campbell?" His tone had shifted slightly, a new note of uncertainty creeping in. Jasmine nodded, recognizing the small victory. At least this officer knew enough to recognize the unit was real. "And what rank did you say she holds?" Officer Brentwood chimed in, still skeptical. "I didn't, but she's a colonel." This time the officers exchanged glances. The mustached officer whispered something to Brentwood, who shook his head dismissively. "You know," Brentwood said, approaching Jasmine again. "Impersonating military personnel is a serious offense. If you're making this up." "I'm not," Jasmine cut in, her patience wearing thin. "My mother has served for 20 years. I've lived on 3 different military bases. I know what a SOCOM patch looks like before I could tie my shoes. The officers fell silent at her confidence. The mustached one pulled Brentwood aside for a whispered conversation, occasionally glancing back at Jasmine. Meanwhile, more neighbors had gathered on their porches and lawns. Mrs. Wilson from next door was openly staring now, her gardening gloves still on as if she'd dropped everything to watch. On any other day, Jasmine would wave to her. Mrs. Wilson often brought over homemade cookies, but today, under these circumstances, the familiar face felt like another pair of judging eyes. Jasmine's phone buzzed with another text from her mother. 5 minutes away. A small sense of relief washed over her. Soon this humiliation would end. Her thoughts drifted to the groceries in the back seat. The chicken would need to marinate soon if dinner was going to be ready when her grandparents arrived. Such a normal concern seemed almost laughable now. "Hey," the tall officer called again. "If your mom's really a colonel in special forces, she must have some stories, huh?" Jasmine looked up, unsure if he was genuinely curious or still mocking her. "She doesn't talk about her work much. Classified stuff, I bet," he said with an exaggerated wink to his colleagues. The mustached officer laughed. "Yeah, real James Bond type, I'm sure." "More like she follows security protocols," Jasmine replied coolly. "Which is probably something you should understand, officer." That silenced them again. Officer Brentwood's radio crackled with chatter about another incident across town, but he made no move to respond. Clearly invested in seeing this situation through to its conclusion. "You know," he said, walking back toward Jasmine, "we get a lot of kids taking their parents' cars without permission. Just saying you might save yourself some trouble by coming clean now." Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "There's nothing to come clean about. I have my license. I have permission to drive this car. My mother will confirm that when she gets here." "And when exactly will that be? Because we've been waiting quite a while." As if on cue, the sound of an approaching engine drew everyone's attention. A black government-issued SUV turned the corner, its headlights cutting through the gathering darkness. It pulled up smoothly behind the line of police cruisers, the engine humming before going silent. All 3 officers turned to watch as the driver's door opened. Even from a distance, there was something commanding about the way Colonel Maya Taylor emerged from the vehicle. She paused for a moment, surveying the scene with a practiced eye. The 3 police cars, the officers standing with varying degrees of attention, and her daughter sitting at the edge of a patrol car. Colonel Taylor was not in casual clothes as she might have been at home. Instead, she wore her full-dress blues, having come directly from an award ceremony at the base. The sight of her uniform, pressed and perfect, adorned with ribbons and medals that told the story of deployments and commendations, created an immediate shift in the atmosphere. She closed her car door and walked toward the group with measured steps. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, regulation perfect. Her posture was straight, shoulders squared, the kind of bearing that came from years of discipline and leadership. Jasmine felt a surge of pride watching her mother approach. This was the woman who had raised her alone after her father died, who had moved them from base to base, who had taught her to face challenges head-on. The officers had gone completely still. The tall one with the buzz cut straightened up instinctively, his body responding to the presence of a superior officer before his mind had even processed it. The mustached officer adjusted his collar. Brentwood's smirk had vanished entirely. "Good evening, gentlemen," Colonel Taylor said as she approached, her voice clear and controlled in a way that commanded attention without raising volume. "I'm Colonel Maya Taylor. I understand you've detained my daughter?" There was a moment of stunned silence before Officer Brentwood found his voice. "Ma'am, Colonel, we were conducting a routine traffic stop." "A routine traffic stop that required 3 patrol cars?" Colonel Taylor's eyebrow raised slightly. "That seems excessive. We had reason to believe the vehicle might be taken without permission," the mustached officer offered, his earlier confidence nowhere to be found. "Despite my daughter telling you otherwise," Colonel Taylor said, "it wasn't a question." "We have to verify claims, ma'am," Brentwood replied, his tone now professionally respectful, especially with younger drivers. Colonel Taylor nodded once. "I understand verification. What I don't understand is why my daughter was made to exit her vehicle and wait by the roadside for nearly half an hour when a simple phone call would have resolved this." Immediately, the officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. "May I see what she was pulled over for?" Colonel Taylor asked, extending her hand for the citation or warning. Brentwood shifted his weight. There was a taillight out, ma'am. Jasmine's eyes widened slightly. There had been no mention of a taillight before. Colonel Taylor walked calmly to the back of her sedan, the officers following behind like uncertain schoolchildren. She examined both taillights, which were perfectly intact. Both appear to be functioning, she observed, her tone neutral but pointed. It must have been a momentary malfunction, Brentwood suggested weakly. Colonel Taylor turned to face the officers fully, her metals catching the light from the street lamp. Gentlemen, I've served this country for 20 years. I've led men and women in combat zones. I've made life or death decisions under incredible pressure, so believe me when I tell you that I can recognize when someone isn't being entirely truthful. The officers stood silent under her steady gaze. My daughter, Colonel Taylor continued, is an honor student with a perfect driving record. She was running an errand for me, 3 blocks from our home with my full knowledge and permission. She turned to Jasmine. Are you okay? Jasmine nodded, standing up straighter now that her mother was here. Yes, ma'am. Colonel Taylor returned her attention to the officers. I'd like to see your badge numbers, please. All 3 of you. The black SUV gleamed under the streetlights as Colonel Maya Taylor stood with perfect posture, her request for badge numbers hanging in the air. The 3 officers exchanged quick glances. Their earlier confidence completely evaporated. Ma'am, I don't think that's necessary, Officer Brentwood said, attempting to regain control of the situation. We were just doing our job. Colonel Taylor's expression remained calm but unyielding. Your badge numbers, please, she repeated, her voice quiet yet somehow filling the entire street. Or would you prefer I call your commanding officer directly? The neighborhood had gone eerily silent. Even the usual evening sounds, dogs barking, children playing in backyards, cars passing by, seemed to have paused, as if the whole street was holding its breath. Officer Brentwood was the first to break. Officer Michael Brentwood, badge number 4872, he said, the professional tone unable to hide his discomfort. The tall officer with the buzz cut followed suit. Officer David Chen, badge 5103, the mustached officer completed the reluctant chorus. Officer Robert Weller, badge 3946. Colonel Taylor nodded once, committing each name and number to memory without writing anything down. Thank you, gentlemen. She turned toward Jasmine. Honey, are your groceries still in the car? Yes, Jasmine answered, relief washing over her now that her mother had taken control of the situation. Get them, please. We need to get home to start dinner. Colonel Taylor's voice softened when speaking to her daughter, though her bearing remained military precise. As Jasmine moved toward her mother's sedan, Officer Brentwood stepped forward. Ma'am, we still need to complete the traffic stop. Colonel Taylor fixed him with a steady gaze. On what grounds, Officer Brentwood? The taillight that mysteriously fixed itself? Brentwood's face reddened slightly. Standard procedure, ma'am. I see. Colonel Taylor reached into her uniform pocket and produced a small leather wallet, which she opened to reveal her military ID and credentials. Perhaps this will help expedite your procedures. The officers studied her identification, not just the standard military ID, but the additional credentials that confirmed her rank and special clearance status. Their expressions shifted as they processed what they were seeing. Officer Chen, the tall one with the buzz cut, was the first to react. As a former military man himself, something evident in his posture and haircut. Recognition dawned in his eyes. You're with 5th Group, he said, a note of genuine respect now in his voice. Yes, Colonel Taylor replied simply. I was Army too, 101st Airborne, Chen continued, standing a little straighter. Never made it to Special Forces, though. Colonel Taylor nodded acknowledgement but didn't lose focus on the matter at hand. Then you understand the importance of treating civilians with respect and dignity, correct? Yes, ma'am, Chen replied, looking increasingly uncomfortable. By now, Jasmine had retrieved the grocery bags from the back seat and stood beside her mother, watching the officer's demeanor continue to transform. Mrs. Wilson and several other neighbors remained on their porches, straining to hear the conversation. Officer Weller, the one with the mustache, cleared his throat. Look, there seems to have been a misunderstanding here. A misunderstanding, Colonel Taylor repeated, her tone measured. My daughter was pulled over 3 blocks from our home, made to exit her vehicle, questioned about whether she was stealing her mother's car, and kept waiting on the curb for nearly 30 minutes despite having valid identification and offering to call me immediately. She paused. Would you call that a misunderstanding, Officer Weller? Or would you call it something else? Weller had no response. My daughter told you who I was, Colonel Taylor continued, her voice never rising yet carrying unmistakable authority. She told you she had permission to drive my car, instead of taking her at her word or immediately contacting me to verify. You chose to escalate the situation by calling in additional units, treating her like a criminal, and making remarks that questioned her honesty. The gathering crowd of neighbors had grown. The Patels from across the street stood on their lawn, not even pretending to water their garden anymore. The elderly Thompson couple had come out with their walker, just to see what was happening. Even teenagers who usually ignored everything were paused on bicycles at the edge of the scene. Officer Brentwood attempted to salvage the situation. Colonel Taylor, with all due respect, we deal with a lot of situations involving young drivers. With all due respect, Officer Brentwood, Colonel Taylor interrupted, I've dealt with insurgents in war zones who showed more courtesy than what my daughter described. Receiving from you tonight, the statement landed like a grenade in the middle of the street. Several of the watching neighbors audibly gasped. Colonel Taylor wasn't finished. I've spent my career protecting American citizens and the values we hold dear. One of those values is the presumption of innocence. Another is treating people with basic human dignity regardless of their age or appearance. She glanced at Jasmine, who stood tall beside her mother despite the ordeal. My daughter is 17 years old. She has a 4.0 GPA. She volunteers at the Veterans Hospital on weekends. She has never been in any trouble with the law. Yet tonight, she was made to feel like a criminal in her own neighborhood, 3 blocks from home. The officers stood in uncomfortable silence, the weight of Colonel Taylor's words settling over them. I understand that law enforcement is a difficult job, Colonel Taylor continued, her tone shifting slightly. I work alongside police officers and respect the challenges you face. But what happened here tonight goes beyond procedure. It speaks to assumptions and attitudes that have no place in professional policing. Officer Chen nodded slightly, the first acknowledgement from any of the officers that something had gone wrong. Now, Colonel Taylor said, glancing at her watch, as I mentioned, we have dinner guests arriving soon. Unless there's an actual legal reason to detain my daughter further, we'll be going home. Brentwood looked at his fellow officers, then back at Colonel Taylor. You're free to go, ma'am. We apologize for any inconvenience. Colonel Taylor raised an eyebrow at the word inconvenience but chose not to challenge it. Instead, she turned to Jasmine. Let's go home, honey. As they walked toward their respective vehicles, Officer Chen stepped forward. Colonel Taylor? She paused, turning back. I'd like to personally apologize to your daughter, he said, his military background perhaps giving him the courage his colleagues lacked. We should have handled this differently. Colonel Taylor looked at Jasmine, letting her decide how to respond. Jasmine considered the officer for a moment. I accept your apology, she said finally, her voice steady. But I hope you'll think about this the next time you pull someone over. Chen nodded, genuine regret showing on his face. I will. Colonel Taylor gave him a small nod of acknowledgement before continuing toward her SUV. Jasmine, I'll follow you home. As Jasmine returned to her mother's sedan, she could feel the eyes of the entire neighborhood on her. The same people who had watched her being treated like a criminal now witnessed her walking away with dignity. Her mother, a decorated Special Forces colonel, right behind her. The grocery bags rustled as she placed them on the passenger seat. The chicken would need to marinate quickly now if dinner was going to be ready on time. Such a normal concern after such an extraordinary confrontation. As she started the car, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The 3 officers stood by their patrol cars having what appeared to be a serious conversation. Officer Chen looked toward her car, his expression thoughtful. In her side mirror, Jasmine could see her mother waiting in the SUV, watchful and protective. The sight gave her a feeling of security that went beyond the immediate situation. Her mother had always taught her to stand up for herself, but tonight she had also shown Jasmine what it looked like when someone stood up for you. With a deep breath, Jasmine signaled and pulled away from the curb. The police lights had finally been turned off, returning the street to its normal evening calm. But Jasmine knew that for her, and perhaps for those officers, nothing would be quite the same after tonight. Her mother's SUV followed closely behind as they drove the remaining 3 blocks home. A silent escort that spoke volumes about protection, respect, and the unexpected ways lessons were sometimes delivered in life. The familiar crunch of gravel welcomed Jasmine as she pulled into the driveway of their 2-story brick home. The porch light was on. She'd set it to automatic timer before leaving, casting a warm glow over the front yard. Her mother's black SUV pulled in behind her, its government plates a stark reminder of the authority that had just changed everything back on Oakwood Drive. Jasmine gathered the grocery bags and stepped out of the car. The weight of the evening's event still heavy on her shoulders despite the resolution. She waited for her mother to join her before walking to the front door. "You okay?" Colonel Taylor asked quietly, her voice softening now that they were away from the officers and neighbors. "Yeah," Jasmine nodded, though the slight tremble in her hands as she fumbled with the house keys told a different story. Inside, the house was quiet and still. The dining room table was already set for 5. Jasmine had prepared it before leaving for groceries, excited about her grandparents' visit. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, and her grandmother's favorite flowers, yellow daisies, sat in a vase as the centerpiece. Colonel Taylor placed her service cap on the entry table and helped Jasmine carry the groceries to the kitchen. For a moment they worked in silence, Jasmine unpacking the bags while her mother hung up her uniform jacket, revealing the crisp white shirt underneath still adorned with ribbons and badges. "They arrive in an hour," Jasmine said finally, pulling out the chicken she'd planned to marinate. "I don't know if that's enough time now." "We'll make it work," her mother replied, rolling up her sleeves. "I'll help. Tell me what to do." This was their way, practical solutions moving forward. But the elephant in the room remained unaddressed. As Jasmine began mixing the marinade ingredients, her hands still slightly unsteady, she finally broke. "They didn't believe me, Mom, not one word. They laughed when I said you were in Special Forces." Colonel Taylor paused, a cutting board in hand. Her expression remained controlled, but a muscle tightened in her jaw. "Tell me everything that happened." From the beginning, while chopping vegetables and preparing the meal, Jasmine recounted every detail. The initial stop, Officer Brentwood's dismissive tone, the laughter when she mentioned her mother's career, the way they made her stand by the road while neighbors watched. Colonel Taylor listened without interrupting, her knife rhythmically slicing through bell peppers with military precision. When Jasmine finished, her mother set down the knife and turned to face her fully. "First, I want you to know how proud I am of how you handled yourself," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You remained composed, you were respectful, and you didn't escalate the situation. That takes real strength." Jasmine nodded, swallowing hard against the lump forming in her throat. "Second," her mother continued, "what happened tonight was wrong. It wasn't your fault, and you didn't deserve to be treated that way." "I just keep thinking about what might have happened if you weren't who you are," Jasmine said quietly. "If you didn't have those medals and that uniform, would they have let me go home at all?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither wanted to fully voice. Colonel Taylor took a deep breath. "That's something I've thought about throughout my entire career. The uniform commands respect, often instant respect. But what about when I'm not wearing it? What about people who don't have one?" She moved to the sink to wash her hands, her back straight even in this casual moment at home. 20 years of military bearing didn't disappear when the uniform came off. "The chicken needs to marinate," Jasmine said, trying to focus on the practical task at hand. "It does," her mother agreed, helping her prepare the dish. "But we also need to talk about what happens next." "Next?" Yes, what those officers did was inappropriate. At minimum, there should be a formal review of their conduct. Jasmine hesitated, placing the chicken in the marinade. "You want to file a complaint?" "I think we should consider it," Colonel Taylor said carefully. "Not out of vengeance, but accountability." The kitchen timer beeped and Jasmine moved to check the oven temperature. The familiar routines of cooking provided a comforting contrast to the evening's chaos. "I don't know, Mom," she said finally. "Won't that just make things worse? Create more trouble?" Colonel Taylor leaned against the counter, studying her daughter's face. "Sometimes avoiding trouble in the short term creates bigger problems in the long term. If we say nothing, those officers might treat the next person the same way, someone who doesn't have a mother in uniform to come to their rescue." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Jasmine checked her watch. It was too early for her grandparents. Colonel Taylor moved to answer it, her posture automatically straightening as she approached the door. Through the frosted glass, they could make out the shape of a police uniform. Jasmine felt her stomach drop. "Mom, it's okay," her mother said calmly. "Wait in the kitchen." But Jasmine followed a few steps behind, unwilling to let her mother face this alone, whatever it was. Colonel Taylor opened the door to reveal Officer Chen standing on their porch, his patrol car parked at the curb. He'd removed his hat and held it respectfully in his hands. "Colonel Taylor," he said with a small nod, "I apologize for the intrusion. I was hoping I might have a word with you and your daughter." Colonel Taylor didn't immediately invite him in. "Regarding? What happened earlier?" Chen said. "I felt our conversation wasn't finished." After a moment's consideration, Colonel Taylor stepped aside. "You can come in, but make it brief. We have family arriving soon." Officer Chen entered the foyer, his presence seeming somehow diminished without his partners and the flashing lights of the patrol cars. He nodded acknowledgement to Jasmine, who stood with arms crossed in the hallway. "I wanted to come personally," he began, to offer a more formal apology. "What happened tonight wasn't right." Colonel Taylor's expression remained neutral. "I appreciate you saying that, Officer Chen. But I'm curious why you felt the need to come to our home to tell us this." Chen shifted his weight, uncomfortable under her steady gaze. "Because an apology at the scene with everyone watching isn't the same as coming to someone's home and owning a mistake." He turned to Jasmine. "We were wrong to treat you that way." "I was wrong. There was no taillight out. There was no legitimate reason for the stop." The admission hung in the air between them. "Then why?" Jasmine asked, finding her voice. "Why did Officer Brentwood pull me over?" Chen took a deep breath. The honest answer? A young black girl driving an expensive car in this neighborhood. He made assumptions he shouldn't have made. We all did. The blunt acknowledgement stunned both Jasmine and her mother into momentary silence. "I'm not saying this to excuse it," Chen continued. "I'm saying it because pretending it was anything else would be another lie. And you deserve better than that." Colonel Taylor studied the officer carefully. "Your honesty is appreciated, Officer Chen, but it doesn't change what happened." "No, ma'am, it doesn't," he agreed. "But what might change things is what happens next. I've already spoken to my sergeant. There will be an internal review of the incident, and I'll be providing a full statement about what occurred." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, offering it to Colonel Taylor. "This has my direct number. If you want to file a formal complaint, which you have every right to do, I'll support your statement completely." Jasmine exchanged a surprised look with her mother. This was not what either of them had expected. "Why are you doing this?" Jasmine asked. "Won't you get in trouble?" Chen's expression was solemn. "Probably. But I was in the Army for 6 years before joining the police force. One thing I learned is that integrity means doing the right thing even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Colonel Taylor took the card, her expression softening slightly. "Your sergeant, would that be Richard Donovan?" Chen blinked in surprise. "Yes, ma'am. You know him?" "We've worked together on a joint task force," she replied. "He's a good man." "He is," Chen agreed. "And he was not happy when I told him what happened tonight." The sound of another car pulling into the driveway filtered through the open door. Jasmine's grandparents arriving for dinner. "I should go," Chen said, recognizing the moment. "I just wanted you both to know that what happened tonight won't be swept under the rug." "Not if I have anything to say about it." Colonel Taylor nodded. "Thank you for coming, Officer Chen. Your honesty means a great deal." As Chen turned to leave, he paused at the door. "Your daughter handled herself with remarkable poise tonight, Colonel. You should be proud." "I am," Colonel Taylor replied, placing a hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "Every day." After Chen left, they watched from the doorway as he drove away, his patrol car disappearing around the corner just as Jasmine's grandparents' sedan pulled up. "Well," Colonel Taylor said quietly. "That was unexpected." Jasmine nodded, still processing. "Do you think anything will really change?" Her mother considered the question seriously. "Big changes start with small moments of honesty and accountability. What matters is that someone was brave enough to admit a wrong and try to make it right." She squeezed Jasmine's shoulder. "Sometimes that's all we can ask for." As her grandparents approached the front door, Colonel Taylor added, "We'll talk more about this later, okay? About the complaint and what you want to do." Jasmine nodded, grateful for her mother's willingness to let her have a say in what happened next. For now, Though it was time to welcome family, finish preparing dinner, and try to set aside the evening's events for a few hours. The chicken was marinating, the vegetables were chopped, and somehow, despite everything, they were still on schedule. Life, Jasmine was learning, rarely went as planned. But with the right people by your side, even the unexpected moments could lead somewhere important. 2 weeks had passed since that evening on Oakwood Drive. The mid-October air had turned crisp, painting the neighborhood trees in brilliant oranges and reds. Jasmine sat at the kitchen table, laptop open in front of her, a half-finished college application displayed on the screen. Her mother's coffee mug steamed beside her own cup of tea. Colonel Taylor entered the kitchen in civilian clothes, jeans and a simple button-up shirt. Without her uniform, she looked different, softer somehow, though her posture still gave away her military background. "Still working on Berkeley?" she asked, refilling her coffee. Jasmine nodded, tapping her pen against the table. "The personal essay part is hard. They want something that shows who I am, something meaningful." Her mother peered over her shoulder at the screen. "You've got a lot of meaningful experiences to choose from." "That's the problem," Jasmine sighed. "Too many options." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Colonel Taylor glanced at her watch with a raised eyebrow. "That'll be Sergeant Donovan. Right on time." Jasmine saved her application and closed the laptop. "Should I stay or go?" "Stay," her mother said firmly. "This concerns you too." When Colonel Taylor opened the front door, Police Sergeant Richard Donovan stood on their porch in full uniform, his silver badge catching the morning sunlight. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair and deep smile lines around his eyes, though he wasn't smiling now. "Maya," he greeted Colonel Taylor, the use of her first name indicating their professional relationship extended beyond mere acquaintance. "Thank you for agreeing to meet at your home." "Of course," she replied, leading him into the living room where Jasmine waited. "You remember my daughter, Jasmine?" "Yes." Sergeant Donovan nodded respectfully toward Jasmine. "How are you doing, young lady?" "I'm okay," Jasmine answered, more reserved than usual. The sergeant took a seat in the armchair across from them, placing a folder on the coffee table. "I wanted to update you both personally on the outcome of our internal review regarding the incident 2 weeks ago." Colonel Taylor nodded. "We appreciate that." After the confrontation and Officer Chen's unexpected visit, Jasmine and her mother had spent several long evenings discussing what to do. They had ultimately decided to file a formal complaint, not out of vengeance, but because, as Colonel Taylor put it, sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same thing. Sergeant Donovan opened the folder. "First, I want to apologize again on behalf of the department for what happened. We've completed a thorough review, including dash cam footage, officer statements, and your formal complaint." Jasmine tensed slightly, remembering how those cameras had recorded her standing on the curb, embarrassed as neighbors watched. "Officer Chen came forward immediately," Donovan continued. "His account aligned with yours completely. The other officers were less forthcoming initially. And your findings?" Colonel Taylor asked, her voice calm but expectant. Sergeant Donovan met her gaze directly. "The stop was unjustified. There was no traffic violation. Officer Brentwood has been suspended without pay for 2 weeks and is being reassigned to desk duty, pending completion of additional training on bias and proper procedure." He turned to Jasmine. "Your statement was particularly helpful. The way you documented the comments made, the timeline of events, it showed remarkable presence of mind under difficult circumstances." Jasmine glanced at her mother, who gave her an encouraging nod. "What about the other officers?" Colonel Taylor asked. "Chen and Weller?" "Officer Weller received a formal reprimand," Donovan replied. "As for Chen, his actions after the incident, coming forward, providing an honest account and taking responsibility, were taken into consideration. He's been assigned as a training officer for our new community outreach program." He reached into the folder and pulled out a letter. "This is an official apology from the department. I know it doesn't undo what happened, but it's important that there be a record of acknowledgement." Colonel Taylor took the letter, scanning its contents before passing it to Jasmine. The formal language felt oddly disconnected from the reality of that evening. The fear, the humiliation, the anger, but the acknowledgement itself mattered. "There's something else," Sergeant Donovan said, his tone shifting slightly. After our review, we expanded the investigation to look at Officer Brentwood's previous traffic stops over the past year. Both Jasmine and her mother looked up at this. We found a pattern. Donovan continued, his expression grave. Young minority drivers were stopped at a rate nearly 4 times higher than other drivers, and those stops lasted on average 12 minutes longer. The implications hung in the air between them. So what happens now? Jasmine asked, finding her voice. He gets some training and goes back on patrol. Sergeant Donovan shook his head. No, the suspension and reassignment are just the beginning. We're implementing department-wide changes to address this issue systematically. He looked directly at Jasmine, and part of that change includes having people like you speak to our officers. Me? Jasmine blinked in surprise. Yes, Donovan nodded. If you're willing. Officer Chen suggested a new training module where community members share their experiences with our officers, putting a human face to these incidents. Your account would be particularly valuable. Colonel Taylor watched her daughter carefully. This would be entirely your choice, Jasmine. No pressure either way. Jasmine considered the proposition. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a high school senior worried about college applications and cooking dinner for her grandparents. Now she was being asked to help reform police practices. Could I think about it? She asked finally. Of course, Sergeant Donovan assured her. Take all the time you need. After Donovan left, Jasmine returned to the kitchen table and her college application. The personal essay prompt stared back at her from the screen. Describe an experience that fundamentally changed your perspective. She began to type. 3 days later, Jasmine stood in the community room of the police station, her hands slightly trembling as she adjusted the microphone. 20 police officers sat before her, some in uniform, others in plainclothes. Officer Chen was among them, giving her an encouraging nod from the back row. Her mother stood by the door, present but deliberately keeping her distance. This was Jasmine's moment. My name is Jasmine Taylor, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. 2.5 weeks ago, I was driving my mother's car to pick up groceries. I was 3 blocks from home when flashing lights appeared in my rearview mirror. The room was silent as she recounted the story, not just the facts of what happened, but how it felt. The mixture of confusion and fear when first pulled over, the humiliation of being made to stand by the roadside while neighbors watched, the anger when officers laughed at her truthful statements about her mother. What stayed with me most wasn't the stop itself, Jasmine continued, gaining confidence as she spoke. It was the feeling that nothing I said mattered, that I wasn't believed simply because of who I appeared to be, a young black girl in a nice car. Several officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I was lucky, she acknowledged. My mother arrived in her full dress uniform with medals that demanded instant respect. The situation changed immediately, but I keep thinking about people who don't have that, who don't have a mother in special forces to come to their rescue. She paused, looking around the room. I'm not here to make anyone feel bad. I'm here because Officer Chen said something important when he came to apologize. He said integrity means doing the right thing, especially when it's hard. That stuck with me. At the back of the room, Chen straightened slightly. I believe most of you became police officers to help people, Jasmine continued. To protect your community. I'm part of that community. My friends are part of that community. And we need to know that when you see us, you really see us, not just assumptions or stereotypes. After she finished speaking, the questions began. Some officers wanted specific details about the incident. Others asked broader questions about how she thought police could improve community relations. Through it all, Jasmine answered thoughtfully, neither accusatory nor sugarcoating her experience. When the session ended, several officers approached to thank her personally. Officer Chen waited until the others had dispersed before coming forward. That took courage, he said simply. Jasmine shrugged. So did coming to our house to apologize. Fair point, he smiled slightly. Your talk made an impact, especially on some of the younger officers still figuring out what kind of cops they want to be. As they left the station, Colonel Taylor put an arm around her daughter's shoulders. Proud doesn't begin to cover it, she said quietly. Later that evening, Jasmine returned to her college application, the personal essay now complete. She'd written about that night on Oakwood Drive, not just the injustice, but what came after. The difficult decisions about whether to file a complaint, the conversation with Officer Chen, the opportunity to speak to the department, the small but meaningful changes that had resulted. She titled the essay "When They See Me," and ended with a reflection on how a moment of injustice had evolved into an opportunity for growth and understanding, for herself, for the officers involved, and perhaps for her community. As she submitted the application, her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. It was a group message to several people, including her mother. Community Oversight Committee meeting confirmed for Tuesday, 6 p.m. Your input would be valuable. Sergeant Donovan. Jasmine smiled slightly as she added the meeting to her calendar. Her mother had always taught her that true leadership wasn't about rank or uniform. It was about having the courage to stand up, speak truth, and work towards something better. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a teenager pulled over 3 blocks from home. Today, she was becoming something more, a voice for change in her community. She glanced at the framed photo on her desk. Herself as a small child, sitting proudly on her mother's shoulders, both of them smiling widely. The caption beneath read, "Like mother, like daughter." The truth of those words had never felt more real.